it seems to me you, amongst many Conservative MPs that I would regard as proper Conservative MPs, are slightly concerned about the direction of travel with this government.
Yes, indeed. I think we need to take the economic issues more seriously. I'm all for having strong medical and scientific advice in the room because we don't want to take undue risks. But we need to balance that, don't we, Mike, against our freedoms and about the need to promote a more active recovery. And we were having a good recovery from the early lockdowns, first half of this year. It's now slowed to a halt, and the government should be more worried about that. So I'm saying to them, cancel the national insurance tax rise, get behind business and individuals who want to make things happen, and don't make life quite so difficult for everybody.
No, quite. Because there have been many people who have said to me over the past week or so, this was going to be the bounce back Christmas. This was going to be our opportunity to make back all the money that we lost last year, because Christmas for many people, particularly in hospitality, is more than just 1 month's worth of money. It's like 4 months worth of money, and this is the amount, and this is what they look forward to. And so many Christmas parties are being cancelled. So much business is now disappearing that people aren't going to have that bounce back ability that they hoped for.
No, that's right. And of course, I and other MPs will be going to Westminster again to our place of work and mixing with each other at our place of work, particularly to debate these new measures. And so if that is all right to do, can't we just let other people and other businesses make their own decision about how they can operate as safely as possible? And I think, we're in a much better world now than when the virus first hit, because the World Health Organization says these vaccines are going to work against Omicron. It appears that you're very unlikely to get a serious version of the disease or to die if you get Omicron, thanks to the vaccines, if you've had all your jabs. And we've also got used to the idea that businesses can enable quite a lot of their staff to work from home if that is mutually agreed. So people have options. We don't want to make people do things they don't want to do. But that should also apply to the government. They shouldn't think there's one rule that will suit everybody, apart from perhaps some senior civil servants in the government who don't obey it.
No, quite. Are you worried about that as well? Because, clearly there has been a bit of a hiccup, if you like, in terms of the government's sort of ability to convince others to behave as they should, or as they would like them to, given that the advantage of being in Parliament or being in Downing Street is apparently you don't have to worry about the rules, you can just do what you like.
Well, I think we need to clear this up very quickly. And I think the Prime Minister is right to say to the Cabinet Secretary, tell me what happened. And I think he then needs to take disciplinary action with senior officials if it appears that senior officials did organise illegal parties when the rest of us were told not to. That is unacceptable. Those who make the rules and lecture the rest of us on how we must obey the rules should surely take the rules even more seriously for themselves.
Well, you would think they might be a bit worried at being caught out, apart from anything else, but they don't seem to have realised the thing that we all know now, which is that pretty much everybody is on a phone of some kind or other, no matter where they are in the world at any given time. Somebody's recording it, and somebody will find out what you've been doing.
Yeah, you'd have thought self-preservation, but surely more importantly, Mike, they were telling us that we had to do these things for the sake of our safety and the safety of our friends and family and neighbours. And if they really believed these things were vital to safety, there would be no question of them breaking the rules themselves. That's why this is a serious possible infringement of the rules and why we need to clear it up. Did they break the rules? If so, take some action. If they didn't break the rules, then their critics have got a lot of apologising to do.
Yes, I think that's right. What about tomorrow and the vote? Because there's going to be a large rebellion by the looks of things. Could be as much as 65 Tory MPs possibly. I think you may be one of them who are not going to go along with these extra work from home rules, the extra mask wearing, the extra COVID restrictions that are being brought in. What do you think that message is going to be that you send to the Prime Minister tomorrow?
Well, I think the biggest rebellion in terms of votes against and abstentions is likely to be on what some people call the vaccine passport, and the government says it's not a proper vaccine passport, because I think there's a growing worry that these temporary infringements of liberty are extending and extending and extending and are becoming built into a system based on papers and computer records and governments watching what we do.
Yeah.
And so I think you should expect quite a big rebellion on that. And I hope the message goes home to the government that we've gone along with quite a lot of things we didn't like in the wider public interest on the grounds they were going to be transitory. Now we see that there is a better response. There are more drugs that treat this disease, that there are vaccines that look pretty effective against this disease. Surely then we should be excused these unusual restrictions on our liberties and freedoms.
Yeah, exactly right. But when is the government going to realise that your arguments on this and others who are in the Conservative Party who are against these restrictions, when are they going to realise that they're barking up the wrong tree here?
Well, I don't know. We live in hope, don't we? I mean, I think probably the Prime Minister would say, look, he has listened, and that this latest round of proposals is not as severe as the one we faced when the virus first hit, nor should it be, because, as I've said, medical science is now much better prepared, and we trust that our hospitals and surgeries are much better prepared. And I'm also trying to get the government engaged in something I know they're concerned about, which is that rightly we tipped a lot of extra money into the health service, and there's more extra money to come. We're not trying to starve it of cash, but we need some reassurance that this money is going to buy the extra capacity. It's the point you made in your introduction, that why are we happily voting lots of extra money for the health service? Because we want a health service that has the capacity to get us through a winter. And in a winter, you can have nasty bouts of flu. You could have nasty bouts of COVID. There are all sorts of things that can haunt you in a winter. And we want to know that that money is spent to provide the nurses, doctors, beds, capacity, drugs that we need to get through. Why wouldn't the money do that?
Well, exactly right. But every single year, John, we get told the same thing. The message is always exactly the same. I was listening to somebody the other day from NHS providers saying, oh, well, you know, it's a very difficult time of the year. We're under a lot of pressure already. We're already operating at maximum capacity. And it's like, well, I mean, if you were running a business like that, you'd be fired, because you would consistently hope every year to improve the capacity. Because if you know that it's coming, surely what you do is you take account of that and you improve from last year. But every single year in the NHS, it seems to be the same problem.
Well, I agree. And it's something I've never really understood about health service management over the years, that every government's put more money in, and there have been arguments about some governments putting more extra in than other governments. And health service would obviously like to be at the top end of expectations on the amount of extra money. But despite that, the number of beds has either stayed constant or has fallen. And yet beds are obviously a very important part of delivering capacity. We see now people sitting in ambulances outside hospitals because there aren't beds immediately available for them to go into, which is dreadful. So why have we been cutting back beds over the years instead of increasing the number of beds? And if we needed a bit of extra money to increase the number of beds, why didn't the administrators say so? Because I can't believe any government would actually have blocked them if they'd said, yes, give us a couple of billion extra and we'll provide you so many beds extra. Indeed, we backed the idea of having a lot of extra beds through the Nightingales to relieve the pressures on district generals to deal with COVID, but then they didn't seem to want to use those very much and shut them down at the first available opportunity. Why didn't we carry on with specialist COVID units to keep the main district general hospitals free of COVID, because cross-infection was clearly a big problem.
Right. But once again, we're being told now by the NHS that everything else is going to be put on hold and everything else goes onto the back burner. So more people than ever will be waiting for an opportunity to go and get themselves sorted out. More people than ever will be waiting even longer for an operation. We were hearing last week that I think more than several thousands of people are waiting more than 12 hours in every time they go to an A&E department. You know, there doesn't seem to be much about the NHS that works. I'm getting a lot of tweets this morning from people saying they're trying to get their booster, but the queuing system can't cope and it's already crashing all over the place. You know, I don't think there's anything that the NHS can do that works properly.
Well, again, we need to ask the administrators and executives to give accurate reports to the Secretary of State and to Parliament and to supervise a better set of answers, don't we? And I know from my own local area that there are lots of recently retired nurses and doctors who would be willing to come back to help with the vaccination tasks so that the mainstream doctors in employment can carry on with all the other things. Because what we don't want to do is to end up with a lot of other things killing people for want of treatment and timely care because we're preoccupied by COVID.
No, quite. And you've also, I don't know whether you've been paying attention to what Steve Baker's been doing over the last few days. Steve Baker, I think rather laudably, has decided to sort of launch a back to basics. I know that's not a great phrase that probably shouldn't revisit.
Conservative way forward, I think he's really launching.
you know, the idea that, you know, let's try and get conservatism back on track. You know, let's look at what this government is doing, point out that actually an awful lot of what it's doing is not terribly conservative, and let's regain and recapture, you know, the spirit of conservatism, if you like, and move forward with that. What's your view of that?
Well, I wish Steve well. I mean, he's a very useful contributor to the debate. I mean, I do my own little bit through johnredwood.com. I put out every day some news, analysis, comment, ideas that I think show conservatism with a small c is an important set of principles and life view that is pretty popular and can help with solving some of the problems of the day. And I'm glad Steve is setting up this wider grouping, and I wish him every success with it.
Yeah. Is it likely to cause him any angst, do you think, from the government? Is the government going to take notice of it? Is he kind of blowing into the wind? What do you think they're going to do about it?
Well, I hope they listen and engage with him, because I think it's well meant. He's a supporter of Boris Johnson, the Prime Minister. It's not part of a leadership bid or anything like that we read about from some other people. But it is a genuine attempt to provide some more intellectual content to show people there are a range of options that can preserve people's freedoms, promote economic recovery, whilst also enabling us to have good health treatment and sensible precautions.
Oh, absolutely right.